Welcome to the Northwest, a Unitarian Universalist congregation where we are gathering this morning virtually and in person as one connected community. I'm Joanne Cantoni and my pronouns are she and her, your worship leader for this morning's service. This morning we welcome Cristy Cardinal. They is a candidate for UU ministry currently serving as a chaplain intern at St. Vincent Health in Toledo. They graduated from Starr King School for the Ministry in May 2023. They believe in a vision of Unitarian Universalism that is liberatory with love at the center. We also have Alex Meyers as our guest pianist this morning, leading our music. If you are a visitor online and would like Northwest to stay in touch with you, please fill out the visitor form appearing in the chat box. If you are with us in person, you can fill out the visitor sign-in form in the atrium. Please greet your neighbors with a wave from wherever you are. We have announcements. And you'll find more information about Northwest and its events in the weekly newsletter and on our website, northwestuu.org. 1, holiday party. You're invited to join the Youth Programs Committee for the Northwest UU holiday party today after the service. We'll have cookie decorating, Hanukkah games, and gingerbread houses, or stay online for a virtual coffee hour. 2, monthly potluck. Join us for a monthly potluck next week on Sunday, December 10th, after the service. Please bring a dish to share. 3, getting to know UU. Have you attended Northwest UU and want to know more about our congregation and denomination? Come to Getting to Know UU on Sunday, December 10 after the service. We'd like to get to know you better. Childcare will be available. Before we begin the prelude, let's all take a deep breath and settle into a time of worship.
Good morning. We begin our worship services with a land acknowledgement. We honor and pay our respects to the land on which we live and work, which was violently stolen through colonialism, genocide, and forced removal of its traditional stewards. These stewards are the Anishinaabe, the Council of the Three Fires, which include the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi people, also known as the Ottawa, Chippewa, and Potawatomi tribes. We also acknowledge the people of African descent who are forcibly removed from their land and separated from their families through kidnapping and enslavement, and pay reverence and respect to them for building this country's infrastructure and economy with no compensation or reparations to date. We light our chalice, the symbol of our faith, knowing that this morning that many other Unitarian Universalist congregations across this land and around the world are doing the same. And while we do so, let us consider the words of Reverend Suzelle Lynch. The flame we kindle in the chalice of faith holds blessings of warmth and light and life-giving energy. It shines forth a beacon to guide us all home. It lights up our longings to connect and to share. It possesses the power to shape a world where equity and compassion reign supreme. May this warmth and light and life-giving energy celebrate the blessings we have claimed and help us extend them in hands and hearts that offer these blessings to all.
Let there be light to drive away the darkness. Let there be wisdom to shine on the unknown. Let there be love to heal our aloneness. Let each of us be a light to one another.
Our opening words are by Alberto Rios, "When giving is all we have." We give because someone gave to us. We give because nobody gave to us. We give because giving has changed us. We give because giving could have changed us. We have been better for it. We have been wounded by it. Giving has many faces. It is loud and quiet, big though small, diamond in wood nails. Its story is old, the plot worn, and the pages too. But we read this book anyway, over and over again. Giving is, first and every time, hand to hand, mine to yours, yours to mine. You gave me blue and I gave you yellow. Together, we are simple green. You gave me what you did not have, and I gave you what I had to give. Together, we made something greater from the difference. Now we'll sing hymn number 123 in the Gray Book. I'm sorry? Oh, don't sing.
Go ahead.
Oh. One purpose of a religious community is to encourage all who gather together to grow more generous. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. Each month, Northwest shares 50% of the plate collection with a local 501c3 organization. The social justice team has selected the Michigan UU Social Justice Network as our December plate collection recipient. MUUSJN is a statewide network of activists from 24 UU congregations and fellowships and their friends who work together for social justice. You can give in a variety of ways that are now visible on your screen. For those here in person, we will pass a collection basket for checks and cash.
Thank you. We'll light one more candle for those things that are not yet shared and for the challenges and blessings you may be holding in your heart. Amen. And now I'd like to invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer. If prayer is not your jam, that's not a word that works for you, please feel free to replace it with one that does. Sources of radiance and resilience, keep watch with those who work or watch or weep this night. May the suffering be soothed. May the sick be tended. May the weary find rest. May the dying and those who love them find peace. May the joyous be shielded. And may all know that we are surrounded in love that is always with us, a web that connects us to all that exists. And now we're going to take a few moments of silence to be with each other in the sacred space, and we'll return to each other singing. Amen.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this
Our reading is an excerpt from A Paradise Built in Hell, The Extraordinary Communities That Arise in Disaster by Rebecca Solnit. The radical economist J.K. Gibson Graham, two women writing under one name, portray our society as an iceberg with competitive capitalist practices visible above the waterline and below it all kinds of aid and cooperation by families, friends, neighbors, churches, cooperatives, volunteers, and voluntary organizations, from softball leagues to labor unions, along with activities outside the market, under the table, bartered labor and goods, and more, a bustling network of uncommercial enterprise. Mutual aid tribes, clans, and villages never went away entirely, even among us, here and now. Now we will sing hymn 155, Circle Round for Freedom, and you're invited to rise in body or spirit and join.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned. Circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole.
It's me again. Hi. I'm really glad to be back with you, and I hope that you're all doing well. If you've come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Indigenous people, like the Aboriginal communities in Australia, where this quote is from, have always known that true liberation is not a solitary journey. It's a collective endeavor. Oh no, say amen all you want. Nobody needs to shush that. Bring it, I'll take them. And you know, this time of year, my mailbox, probably yours is too, is flooded with solicitations for monetary donations from every school I have ever attended, and how very dare the University of Michigan ask me for money. I just want to say that. You know, their endowment is $17 billion. To the local food bank, or Planned Parenthood, or any number of other charities that we could fill in the blank there. These charities give us a tax deduction, and don't get me wrong, giving money directly to a food bank is a solid and ethical choice. Absolutely. And how can we shift our mindset from a charitable approach to one that will acknowledge our shared humanity? Charity does not provide space for our humanity, but rather it gives us an opportunity to feel good, right? Without any sense of knowing about the liberation we can find together. Charity is benevolent and kind, and I know that, but it won't set anyone free. Mutual aid, on the other hand, is when we show up for each other's needs directly, with the understanding that the systems we live in are not adequate. Mutual aid is meeting our needs together without having to move structures that have a lot of power first. Mutual aid is based on the principles of direct action. and solidarity. I was listening to a podcast on my way here. Anybody familiar with the podcast You're Wrong About? If you're not, I commend it to you. It's pretty great. But this person was talking about being a journalist during the protests in 2020 and mutual aid showing up in the ways that he was physically yanked out of being beaten up, and people he didn't know were pouring milk in his eyes to get the tear gas removed, and were offering him food and water when it was necessary. And that's where mutual aid comes from, is that just showing up and doing, right? Not that that's our daily lives, thank goodness, we don't have to do that. It's not charity when we're talking about mutual aid, because it isn't about giving. It's about building and continuing relationships outside of unjust power imbalances. It's not about giving, it's about building relationships. Charity often relies on those power imbalances to be useful. Mutual aid does otherwise. I bet some of you already practice some mutual aid, whether you know it or not. Have any of you ever shared a skill with someone or broken a sandwich in half so someone could eat with you? Have you ever split the gas on a road trip or offered to change someone's oil if they cut your hair? Those are all times when you were giving and receiving mutual aid. Capitalism does not like mutual aid. Big shock, right? Capitalism prefers charity, because capitalism would prefer that we compete constantly for meager resources that they have invented the meagerness of, right? Mutual aid actually counters that and says there's no such thing as scarcity. There is, in fact, no scarcity. But capitalism's free market creates false scarcity for us and creates needs we don't know that we have. And every one of those needs, if we want to get them met, there are qualifications to gain access, right? Often that qualification is money, right? You got to be able to buy it. But also in charity models, it could be any number of things. The Salvation Army, for example, requires folks to participate in their religious services and excludes LGBTQ people from their benevolence. Other charitable organizations require proof of need with elaborate structures on how the need is defined, right? You have to bring a pay stub, or you have to show what your rent is, or you have to show up in a way that demonstrates you as adequately needy. Charity relies on hierarchy, a setup where the organization and its supporters are above the less fortunate who receive services. Mutual aid, on the other hand, is based on the idea that we're all going to need help sometimes, every single one of us. So let's create the bonds in our community to help each other, to show up for each other, and work towards our collective liberation. The history of mutual aid is long. There were guilds in the Middle Ages, and they're precursors to modern day trade unions. They were built for mutual aid. So were fraternal organizations that were born during the Great Depression to help members have health insurance and funeral care. The Black Panthers and the Young Lords, both seen as threats to the status quo, provided breakfast and clothing and health care and other important community needs completely outside of the unjust systems that would rather have seen their destruction. An organization called Food Not Bombs is a loosely knit group of collectives. So when I say an organization, it's loose. But what they do is they give free plant-based meals to communities, and they've been doing that since 1980. And their practice is founded on the idea that corporations and governments prioritize profit over people, and that allows hunger to persist in a time of abundance. So their process is to collect surplus food from grocery stores and restaurants and bakeries, food that would otherwise be thrown away, and then they use it to prepare meals to feed anyone who is hungry. That is the only qualification. You want to eat. You can just show up. It is an all-volunteer run organization, And it probably comes as no surprise that they've been repeatedly targeted by law enforcement for just giving food away. Russian philosopher Peter Kropotkin wrote a book on mutual aid called, surprisingly, Mutual Aid, a Factor of Evolution, in the early 20th century, so over 100 years ago. Advancing ideas he had initially put forward in his seminal work called The Conquest of Bread, which may be a book you've heard of, Kropotkin challenges the prevailing social Darwinist ideas of his time, right? If you think of the early 20th century, that was when social Darwinism was the thing. And that social Darwinism emphasized competition and a survival of the fittest, even in the economy. And he refuted that's not a driving force of evolution. Instead, mutual aid and cooperation are equally important factors in the evolution of a species. He used examples from the animal kingdom, anthropology, and history, all of these things, right, to show that mutual aid is a common and widespread phenomenon. It's not something he made up, it's something he observed. He noticed that it was happening. He contended that in human and animal societies, cooperation and solidarity have played a crucial role in our survival. He challenged the idea that nature is solely a battleground for competition, and instead emphasized the importance of mutual support and community. He advocated for more cooperative and communal understanding of human and animal behavior. Now, I had a big long quote from Kropotkin in my sermon right here. That's real boring and dry. So I'm just going to let you know that really what he was talking about is that it is the unsociable species, the groups, the people, the individuals who don't rely on each other, who are doomed to decay. It bears repeating that we need each other to survive. Because without each other, we are sure to perish. Kropotkin wrote literally thousands of words saying exactly that. Mutual aid is actually old and simultaneously revolutionary, and it is a bold statement of resistance to tyranny, the tyranny of our unjust economic system. Capitalism will have us all die. Kropotkin doesn't deny that humans lean towards competition. He just says that, well, that's not really the only thing we got going on. Sometimes we hear critique of mutual aid or critique of this model of cooperation as something called the tragedy of the commons, right? That we tend to overuse and destroy our common resources. Well, there's a Nobel economist named Elinor Ostrom, and she called an audible on that idea. And she said, no, it's in the interest of the users of commons to keep them functioning. There are examples of collective mutual aid organizations that have been in continuing operating process since the 1500s at least. Sustainability is baked right in. It wouldn't last that long if it wasn't sustainable. Kropotkin's philosophy and Ostrom's economic research, super dense and unreadable. Not going to encourage you to do it. You can if you want. If that's your bag, you can. Where I will direct you, if you want to read more about this, is the work of the indigenous ecologist Robin Wall Kimmerer. In her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, and if you are an audiobook person, she reads that book, and it's delightful. She points to the reciprocity and mutual aid within nature that is evident in indigenous communities, and it is central to survival. She also speaks of gratitude as a radical act, saying, quote, recognizing abundance rather than scarcity undermines an economy that thrives by creating unmet desires. Gratitude cultivates an ethic of fullness, but the economy needs emptiness. I really recommend her book if you aren't familiar. I'm going to take a side quest now to the Christian Bible. I know it's not always where we're comfortable, but I want you to know I always come to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. That's my jam. So, In the Bible, the story of the loaves and fishes is the only story in all 4 books of the gospel: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The story goes that Jesus was traveling after the death of John the Baptist, and because he was kind of a rock star, right, soon a crowd was traveling with him as well. And Jesus wondered what they might feed the multitudes. And he noticed that one of his close companions had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. So Jesus directed his disciples to hand out the food. And when they had fed everyone, he again directed them to collect what was left over. They collected 12 baskets of leftovers after feeding 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. We can interpret this story, a story so important, all 4 Gospels have a version in 2 ways, probably many, many ways, but 2 for the purposes of our time together. The first is that we could interpret it as a miracle performed by God because of the faithfulness of 5,000 people. Their faith manifested what they needed. This is an example of the prosperity gospel, and I'm here to tell you it's trash. Or we could interpret it as a collective act of mutual aid. When Jesus and his disciples shared what they had, the people in the crowd who also had food shared as well. And the sharing continued. And not only did none of the 5,000 people hoard food, none of them took more than they needed, so that everyone had enough. And not just enough for that meal, but probably at least one more. Mutual aid and sustainability, right? We can sometimes take comfort in the stories of the Bible, even if it's not in our comfort zone. To bring it a little bit more personal, I have a group of friends, and we call ourselves the goldfishies. And the story of why we're the goldfishies is a longer one and not relevant, so you're gonna have to invite me back if you ever wanna hear it. I'm just gonna let that be a mystery. But I bring them up because in that group of friends, we're spread out all over the United States and Canada. We have a little fund. It's not very much, but it's something. And we contribute when we have something, and we can take from it when we need something. And it's not much. It's not gonna pay off anybody's mortgage, right? It's not gonna prevent anybody from getting their car repossessed. It's not that kind of money, but it can do something for us when we need a tank of gas or a carton of milk for our kids to eat cereal. And it prevents us from not knowing what to do when we're in those places. We know what to do because we're showing up for each other outside of a system that doesn't value our work enough to pay sustainable wages. Mutual aid does not need to be complicated, is my point there. Food Not Bombs, super complicated, right? Making gallons and gallons and gallons and gallons of soup to give away for free is, it doesn't have to be that complicated. They have a term they use called soup for a revolution, which I really like, and it doesn't have to be soup for a revolution. It can just be, here's $20 to get some groceries. It can also be a community garden. It can be a pastoral care group, right? My faith, my Unitarian Universalism, is based on a few things that are quite clear to me. One, we are all sacred. Every single person is blessed and highly favored, as they say in more religious circles than ours. And 2, the gates on the beloved community are opened with the keys of mutual aid and collective liberation. Ain't none of us free until we all are, as they say in radical spaces. And as Asada Shakur taught us, we have nothing to lose but our chains. So if we aspire to beloved community, we must commit to mutual aid. How, though? How do we do mutual aid? Well, I already said there's probably plenty of ways you already are. You have a pastoral care team. You have people who are showing up for each other and are caring about each other in that way. You have monthly potlucks. A potluck is mutual aid made manifest in a very tangible way. I love a potluck. I think that they are generative, I think that they are healing, and I think they build community. As an aside, well, I said the aside about potlucks, but I also want to say they actually are spiritually transformative. And part of why they are is because the impact of mutual aid. I want to advocate, though, for us to do something a little more challenging. I want us to stop seeing those in need as different from who we are. We are all in need. We are all in need. The separation of us from them that charity requires only serves to diminish everyone's humanity. I want us to value our own humanity so deeply that we can't help but honor the humanity of others. Now listen, I'm as Midwestern as anybody, born and raised right here. And I learned growing up that asking for help was weak and shameful. And I get that saying something like, I might need some help, is really hard for some of us. I've learned, though, like from the Aboriginal communities of Australia, that it isn't help I really want. It's collaboration. It's collective. It's sharing burdens and bounty. And that feels less like help to me and more like love. That feels like love, at least to me, and maybe to you. Amen. A congregation, can be sort of a laboratory for ways we want the world to be. We can try things out, like mutual aid. We can try them out in this container, where we know each other and we have at least a churchy feeling of love for one another, not more. And so we can try it, right? We can try it out. Let us come together, not in the spirit of charity, but as interconnected beings on a collective path towards liberation and the beloved community. And may that come to pass in this lifetime and in every other. Amen, and blessed be. Now, we're going to sing again. You are invited to rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn number 118, which is my absolute favorite hymn of all time, This Little Light of Mine.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Please repeat after me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of hope. The warmth of community. Or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Beloveds, your light, joined with everyone else's light, is not a little light. Shine it bright. Don't let anybody put a lampshade on it, right? As we all move forward in the service of our collective liberation, so we may all be free. Amen. Blessed be.